you just spoke a little bit about the talks in Saudi Arabia and Ukraine over the weekend. But with regard to the role that China played in those talks, can you just speak to how the U.S. government viewed China's involvement, if it was productive, if they were, actually, at the table working in a real way towards an end here? Just your readout of that.
We did believe it was productive that China attended. I'm not going to speak to the details of the meeting because it was a private meeting, but we thought it was productive that they came. We have long said that it would be productive for China to play a role in ending the war in Ukraine if it was willing to play a role that respected Ukraine's territorial integrity and Ukraine's sovereignty. And as I said when I was asked about this a moment ago, we believe it's helpful for countries to attend and hear directly from Ukraine. And I would note that Russia apparently objects to that because you saw Russia criticizing this meeting over the weekend and criticizing the fact that this meeting was held. So we think it's productive for any country to come and hear directly from Ukraine about the concerns Ukraine has. We think it was productive that China did so. In addition to attending the meeting, Deputy Secretary Nuland and the National Security Advisor held a brief separate meeting with the Chinese Special Envoy.
And should we read anything into, pictures from the weekend showed the Saudi official in the middle and, to one side the Chinese official and to the other side the top U.S. official, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Are Saudi Arabia, China, and the U.S. really taking the lead on these talks to develop a constructive path potentially out of this war?
So I think it's always a little dangerous to read into anything just based on the picture. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. Saudi Arabia was the host of this set of talks. It did so at Ukraine's request. We think it was productive that they did so, and we think it's productive, just as we thought it was productive that they invited President Zelensky to come to Saudi Arabia a couple of months ago. So I wouldn't want to say who is in the lead for talks that right now are not happening. There are no peace negotiations going on with Russia right now because Russia has refused to engage in meaningful peace negotiations. Should there ever be peace negotiations, it's Ukraine that will be in the lead from the non-Russian side. The United States is happy to play any role that is productive to stand with our Ukrainian partners, and we would welcome any other country that wants to play a productive role as well.
And then just last question on it. China's readout did say that the meetings helped to, quote, consolidate international consensus on finding a peaceful solution to the conflict. How long do you think it'll take to actually develop that international consensus here?
I think that's a very hard question to answer. This still remains an active war in which Russia has shown no sign of curtailing its imperialist ambitions or coming to the negotiating table. So we will continue to work to convince as many countries as possible around the war that when this war ends, it should end in a way that respects Ukraine's territorial integrity, its sovereignty. That's the point that Ukrainian officials made this weekend. That's the point that U.S. officials made this weekend, and we will continue to press that and try to convince as many countries as possible to take that view of the situation.
Matt, just one thing on that side meeting with Toria, Jake Sullivan, and the Chinese envoy. Is there anything you can say a little bit more on what was the main U.S. message and what kind of takeaways they got from the Chinese envoy? At least why Beijing sent an envoy? Did they get an understanding of that?
I'm not going to speak to why Beijing might have sent an envoy. That's for them to speak to. I will say that the message that we delivered in that meeting was essentially the same that I just delivered, which is that we thought it would be productive for China to play a role here, again, if that role respects Ukraine's territorial integrity and its sovereignty.